We had the official opening last Thursday night, and any of you who were fortunate to be present heard about Fred, the sculptor, from his prime student, Eileen McDonough, who is just working so hard all the time, and she was influenced by Fred from the day she began to sculpt. And it was just a magnificent display of your thoughts on Fred as a sculptor. This is, of course, the second official commemoration of Fred, because 2013, when he would have been 70 years old, they had a sculpture symposium, or it extended to the other arts as well, in Killinduff, at the front corner, which I'll show you in a moment, and in Fred's house. And at that time, in 2013, there was taking part, there was Jackie McKenna, Eileen McDonough, Martha Quinn, who's here beside me, Billy Moore, Valentin Khrushchev, poet and translator from Bulgaria, Jack Harte, who's beside me here, Marianne Fahy, actress, Jerry Ryan, actor, and John McHugh, sculptor. So that was all in 2013. So the legacy continues, and I've no doubt that in 20 years' time there'll be somebody else up here continuing the legacy of Fred Conlon, and Finn is the living example. That's why the title was used for legacy, because it's Finn and his work is continuing the tradition today. So we're very fortunate. Everything that I'll be saying over the next little while is in Jack's book. Jack produced a magnificent book, Unraveling the Spiral, and I've called the slideshow Unraveling the Spiral, because he, charted, is very, very honest what appears in this book, and then there's the account of his work and his times. So Jack is going to kind of come in and explain a little bit from time to time, and we'll get a look at, as I said, you've come through legacy. That's the exhibition. There's Fred and Finn. You like that shot?
Side profile.
Side profile.
Sure.
But today, as I say, we're calling it Unraveling the Spiral. And I'm taking you through the life and times of a sculptor who came from very modest beginnings. And I like the quote from Michael Longley last week. He said he liked his wife and Trinity because she was very brainy. And I'll be using the term, there were two very brainy men came from these two small cottages out of Killinduff. For those who haven't been to Killinduff, you go to Sligo, you go to the Ballina Road, you turn off right at Drummoll West, and you go down the road towards Easky. And you'll see, right sticker here, this thing should work as it right. Anyway, there's Killinduff National School, and across the road is the Split Rock, and then the road goes down to the village of Easky. And little did Fred know that he was going to spend the rest of his life looking at splitting rocks, because that rock is literally within a few hundred yards of his whole place. And it's one of the great geological marvels of County Sligo. Of course, we always put a story on it, because the rock was actually catched by Fionn McCool from the top of the mountain. He was trying to beat his colleague in pitching stones towards the sea, but this rock landed short, about a mile short of the seashore. He was so nice, he took out his sword and he split the rock in two. That was Fionn McCool. And Fred was imbibed with all this sort of stuff growing up through geology, mythology, archaeology and folklore. That's the giant's griddle. Fionn was already baking his eggs on top of the giant's griddle up at Tronatruffon, and Jack lists in the book their trip up to Tronatruffon, giant's griddle. If you go through that rock more than three times, it may close up on you. So twice. So that was the influence of the Split Rock and Fred. So this is the corner here, and you take a left down to the seashore and straight on for Easky. This is Jack's original home house, and Fred's next door. That's the plaque on Jack's house today. And there's a plaque on the side of the road commemorating the families of Harte and Conlon and McDonough. You'll see that in a moment. So this is Fred's home place. And this plaque is on the side of the road at the Forge corner, commemorating the Conlons, the Hartes and the McDonoghs, because Martin Enright, the playwright, his mother was Mary, a cousin of Jack's. And of Fred's. So I mean, what a triumvirate of families there. So as I said, the blacksmith from Killinduff, from the Forge corner. This piece you'll see in a moment, the full picture, it's based on Jack's fowl. So like everything that Fred did, was based on something in reality. There was always a story behind it. And this is the original cottage industry. And we have the full story up here. We won't go into all the detail. Jack, just in a couple of short sentences.
More or less where it all started. I was down on holidays. I always came back every summer to Killeen and myself and Fred were in the village, and there was a lovely little shop there. Eileen Mary Harte had a shop that sold souvenirs and things like that. And I was picking out postcards, and Fred was rummaging around, and he saw this leprechaun or something, and he looked at it and he says to Eileen Mary, "That's not very good." He says, "I could do better than that." And she says, "Do you think you could?" He says, "Yeah, definitely." She says, "All right, come back tomorrow and I'll give you something and you can do it." So the next day we went back, and she gave him a set of modelling clay and that, you know. So he came back out to Killeen. There was a house across the road, Maloney's house, and he started looking at it, and he reproduced it exactly. But then when he reproduced it, he didn't think that it was very functional, so he made it into an ashtray. No better man, he's already a committed smoker. There's a little place there for your cigarette. But anyway, we went back the next day, and she was amazed. She said, "That's fantastic." She says, "Okay, give me this, and come back 3 days' time or something." So we went back 3 days' time, and she had about 10 of them lined up on a tray, all reproduced. And Fred was saying, "How did you do that?" She said, "There's a way to do everything." So she had got the mould and reproduced them. And then she said to him, like, "Now, could you paint them?" And he says, "Oh yeah, of course." My friend, he could do anything. He wouldn't be fazed by anything. So she gave him the 10. He went back, and she gave him paint as well, and painted them all up, you know. So that's the first piece of work that he ever did. And Eileen Mary then was great for him, like, because, you know, they kept doing different, you know, Blarney Castle and the Clonmec Noise, High Cross and things like that. And it was actually great money for Fred, like, because in those days you didn't see money except maybe at Christmas, and he was getting a regular income from it. But subsequently she was very important for Fred, because when he left school he went to what's now Colosseski for 2 years, 3 years, and then he would have been more or less due to emigrate or whatever, you know, because there was no work or anything. And she said, no, you have to stay here, you have talent, you know. So she went into the VEC and she lobbied them for a scholarship to the College of Art. Now, those days, like, a kid from Eastgate being kind of pushed into the College of Art was strange. Didn't faze Red at all, but perfectly right. So she went to the man who was in charge of the VEC, a man called Joe McEvely. Tom McEvely, the CEO, Roland's father, who looked at it, saw immediately that she was right, that he had huge talent, and between the two of them then they lobbied the VEC itself to actually create a scholarship, especially for Fred, and sent him to the College of Art for 5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's good to see Roland McEvely here today, because he's had a lifelong interest in art and was the director of the operation at the Yates Building when Fred did one of his symposiums.
That's right, Sligo.
It
was in 1989.
1989. So well, we'll come to that soon, because it's a far cry from that little cottage to Fred sitting in regal position inside his Cashel Ore at Bunratty, which is probably his biggest piece of art in Ireland, but I have more detailed slides of that later on. And through the College of Art days, he was really a very, very committed scholar, and we have a lovely letter here from Donald O'Merkel, who was the Professor of Art in the College of Art, and a fabulous piece of writing in Irish, where he says that basically Fred was the most talented, intelligent, committed, extraordinary talented student he had ever come to witness under his care. And that he was interested in modern art as well as the traditional Irish arts, and that was clear from the work that Fred was showing through his own students. And lovely line at the end, he was also very supportive of the Gaelic League on rails and the Clash Cattle. Now the rails was like the Irish version of the Legion of Mary, but Fred was very interested in that because of the free chocolate biscuits. And the Gaelic League and the Clash Cattle, because Donald Murco was born in 1914, and he had come through, you know, the revolutionary period and was quite influenced by the likes of Jerome Connor, and that work comes right down because he did work on Lusitania, which I'll mention soon. So he was producing work right from the get-go, St. Bridget and the cattle in this palace was for the School for the Blind, tactile thing up in Drumcondra. He was beginning to work on human form. He really studied, I think, all the European artists. Jackie gave great witness to that. The whole string of classical European artists that Fred was showing back then when he came to Sligo afterwards. And this little piece you can see outside, and the other one as well. So he was developing his own shape and form right through from the very, very early days. Jerome Connor did the very famous Lusitania Memorial in Cove, and Donald Murco had to, I think it had fallen into disrepair, so they had to work on the angel, and Fred worked on that and his early pieces. He's very taken with the whole thing of early Irish art and classical art in terms of the Pieta, the Mother and Child. The Virgin and Child is the only image that connects Drumcliff and Sligo with Islay and Iona in terms of the high crosses. And Fred was pitched right in the middle of Dublin, and he couldn't have been, I suppose, more fortunate to have the director of the National Museum. Well, Brandon O'Riordan became the director, but he was director of excavations at White Tavern Street, High Street in Dublin. George Ogan, who was to become Professor of Archaeology in UCD, they came to the College of Art to look for the best student to do drawings from the finds from High Street, Viking Dublin, and from now. So for Fred to be influenced by that world was just adding to his own capability already. And these are not very good images here, but he did a number of very, very fine and important drawings from those excavations. And he was also a watercolourist. Some of the family might have seen that one of Kesh, County Sligo. He did pottery, he produced pottery. So he was a multi-talented artist in all the arts. His very, very first commission was in my own hometown of Dingle to Tomás Aus. And I think that was through the influence of Donald Murco and Jerome Connor, who had come from Amescall, even though he was dead many decades before that. But Murco was Cork-based, and I don't know how the commission had. They were rebuilding, I remember, the pitch at Dingle itself. And this image of Tomás Aus is a very, very fine piece of work. It's from this very, very early period of the actual date. I want to get the dates of these things if possible. 1967, this one. And it's often missed by people, so I'm only putting this up because a lot of you have been to Dingle. When you go to the football pitch, it's on the right-hand pillars of the gate as you approach the pitch itself. And I'm putting in the picture of the pitch. Now, Jack, will you take over as a footballer? Very briefly. Fred, the footballer.
The only religion that was ever practiced with enthusiasm around Eastleigh when I was young was football, Gaelic football at that. It was a passionate thing for everybody. Now, I had very good pedigree. My uncles and my father all played for Sligo. But I was useless, as everybody kept telling me. He's useless. Big snow off the road. Fred, on the other hand, was brilliant. You know, he was a very, very athletic kind of young fella. And he played for Eastleigh, the Sea Blues. He played for Sligo. I went to see him playing in Pierce Park in Longford. We were living in Lanesborough in County Longford. And he was on the Sligo team. Sligo were playing Longford, so I went up to see him playing. So he went to that level, you know, playing county level at minor, under 18. But then he gave it up. When he went to the College of Art, he kind of was very conscious that an injury to his hands could set him back very much. He needed those two hands. So he gave up the Gaelic football at that stage. I think he did well.
Great outlet in Ireland in the 1970s and 80s and even down to the current period would be the Oireachtas competitions. And the Oireachtas competitions every year are, they're highly valued, highly prized, and Fred won the Oireachtas competition on a number of occasions. The Teha, that's outside here, and the drawing of Turgeish. This is a little crucifixion piece that he made, I think, at home. And he had nothing else to do. Kathleen?
Not quite when we moved into Strandhill.
Yeah.
First, the stations were a significant activity,
Yeah.
and we didn't have a crucifix for the station mass. So Fred went out, and this is what
He made his own
he made his
crucifix
own.
with the station
Yes.
mass. Did you hear that, Father Niall?
He might know the story.
That's up in Marley Park in Dublin, now missing. And generally he was being influenced through his time in college by the spiral. That's why I have called the book Unraveling the Spiral. And he just was going to be a master at making his own of the spiral and the different forms that it is existing for what, 3,000-4,000 years in Irish art. This is called Costa na Galley. It's from a symposium in 1984. And that symposium included Jackie McKenna, Cleana Cusson, whom we lost last year, Eileen McDonough, and Noel Hoare. And this piece was for Vincent Ferguson, who lived out there on the way to Ross's Point. Public Gal, very, very beautiful piece. This is the 50th anniversary of the Yates in the Yates building, and that piece is now in ITU Sligo.
Yes, and Barry Feely has it.
And Barry Feely has
It's the artist copy.
the artist copy. Bit by bit, as I said, Éireann Alban. This was a symposium in Scotland in 1987, and this was to be purchased by Catherine McCann. Now, some of the pages I took from the catalogue, because Anita is here. Anita Watson, Jack has acknowledged her work. If it weren't for Anita's cataloguing of all Fred's pieces, and all the paragraphs are written, actually they're the words of Fred that she used to describe what the pieces are about. It's a very, very valuable record, and that's how Jack made such a marvellous job of the book itself. So, Catherine McCann, Shekinah Gardens in Wicklow. Kathleen, just a word on Catherine and the gardens there, because she purchased quite a few pieces from Fred.
Well, she had a spiritual garden, really, and she used sculptures that she had bought from different artists around the country that would reflect her sense of the spiritual. And they're very beautiful, very interesting, very varied. So she in herself was a patron of the arts.
And this piece, Éireann Alban,
Yeah.
Scottish granite. What a beautiful piece. You could look at that all day, because the spiral is never ending.
Yeah, oh yes. So that was her sense of, I suppose, our concept of God, no beginning, no end, ongoingness, which fell into Fred's own very strong belief about continuity.
Both pagan and Christian at the same time.
Yes.
That's it. And you have this spiral that didn't become a reality. This is the model for a piece that was to be at Dublin Airport.
Shortlisted.
And it's shortlisted, it's outside in the gallery, and it's of stainless steel. So can you imagine that in 10-15 feet high at Dublin Airport roundabout? It didn't make it. It put on something like a wing of an airplane, I think, is it? This was Fred's concept. It was a great pity, but it's a very, very beautiful piece of work in the gallery outside. And there he is in full regalia, very formal pose with that piece. And Jack talks about the Newgrange spiral, the entrance stone to Newgrange. And this one on the right hand side was a Denoya drawing of 1866. So as antiquarians were always interested in the material from the past, and the antiquarian drawings are so special. They still exist today, and they've been reproduced many times.
And interestingly,
yeah.
that theme is very much reflected in the now refurbished Catholic Church in Strandhill, which is very beautiful.
Indeed, the Catholic Church in Strandhill has several elements
Connected with-
of the spiral, and I think Fred's influence was no small
Well,
part there.
I think the man himself.
And I put in this one because Jack recounts in the book about Jack was studying macroeconomics, and Fred told him one day, well, I'm going to a lecture by Francois Henry. She was giving a series of lectures in the College of Art. So he persuaded Jack to forget about the macroeconomics and join him for the lecture. And I think Jack did likewise for the rest of the series, because having a series of lectures, to be able to attend a series of lectures by Francois Henry, that was a big deal at that time. So Francois Henry excavated at Inish Cave, and you have the spiral in two-dimensional form at these cross slabs, which extend it down Inishmurray, it's down as far as Rees can carry, and up as far as Scotland. So there are elements of the two-dimensional spiral in these early Christian cross slabs, and Fred was very aware of that because of that sort of additional work that he had been doing quietly in his time in Dublin. Jack, in the year, this piece here is one of our favourites because it's the Intus for Lucan Community College in 1989. Jack was the principal of the college, and Commission managed to get, wasn't a 1% scheme, or just tell us a moment about it.
No, I had two of his pieces there. But, this one, I was talking to Fred one day, and I'm saying like, what are you working on? He says, I'm looking at the moment, it's very slack, you know. And I said, oh, that's terrible. And he says, oh, that's right. Piece is finished and can't even shift them. And one commission that I got, he said, they paid me a deposit, and they never came back to finish off paying and taking the thing away. And I says, what kind of a piece? So he kind of opened up a catalogue that he had and showed me a photograph of this, and I said, what size is that? And he says, it's life size. Jesus, that's amazing. I said, you know, how much would you be looking for? He says, well, it'll come cheap because I already got a deposit on it, and I deduct that from what it is. So for a very reasonable amount, I managed to buy that piece of Fred, put it up in the school, and it became kind of so central, like that the kids totally related to it. You know, it became more or less a symbol of the school. And a couple of years later, Michael D signed a law as he was exiting the Department of Arts and Culture, saying about authorising 1% of all public building projects to be spent on works of art. So Fred was telling me about this, and I says, hold on a second, I have an extension to the school going up. I wonder if I could manage it, you know. So like, it was already underway, so there wasn't much chance. But I went to the guys in the department and I said, like, there's a new law, you know, 1% of this has to be spent on art. He says, what are you talking about? Are you lunatic or what? And I said, no, from now on, 1%. And he says, you mean to tell me that instead of building schools where they're rat infested, etc., that we have to up the budget to pay for art? And I says, yeah, it's the law. Anyway, I said, and we have a one kind of underway. He said, yeah, but yours is underway, we can't plan for that. And I says, well, you know, like, we could negotiate, couldn't we? So I said, well, let's see what kind of case you can make. So I made a case that, you know, special dispensation should be given so that we could have another Fred Conlon sculpture in the other yard, and that the students would become involved, you know, preparing the background and all that kind of thing, you know. So anyway, the guys in the department said, okay, and we got a piece for the second, which is just called Millennium.
Okay, that's Millennium.
Sculpture.
So that's back to Sligo for a moment. We're stepping back from 89 to Hazelwood, 1985, and somebody might recognise the fine young man here. Did he get in the door yet? Brian Layden is here. And James McKenna. So Fred is in the centre there. Tommy Gallen, the forester. Brian McGarry, who was the curtain forester at Hazelwood, is still out there. Jackie is there, and Eileen is I can't see them from here.
Behind Dad.
Eileen is there. Jackie is over this side, is she?
Yeah, holding the big child.
Yeah. Some tremendous photograph from 1985 at Hazelwood. Fred was to show something reflective of the surroundings, but again, an element of his own Christian faith. The Tau Cross, he has it listed in the book there. But what a beautiful spot to pick for an image that was going to reflect the surroundings. He called it Sus. Sligo Dain is the mountain of the two birds in the distance. I have a better shot of it in a moment. And he took this idea of the plinth and the two birds and resting places either side of it. Jackie was there with the old woman, and Eileen was with her Diarmuid and Grania archway, which we are delighted to say is going to happen again this year. They're going to be some of the pieces weathered, some were vandalised, and eventually they've all disappeared. But there's going to be a reconstruction of some of them this coming summer. Fantastic news. Now this is Such Slave .am, and really beautiful position.
The sleeve, the line is in the background.
Yes, the mountain of the two birds, because we have the Ox Mountains here. Sligo Dain, there's mythology associated with that, and the passage tombs are further out. The Cailleach of Éire's house, so the whole place is peppered with mythology and archaeology. But he moved, his next symposium was in India. Shere Khan was the piece that he called that, and that was in 1991. So 1989 was the critical year, because that's when he took retirement from IT Sligo, now ATU, and he was able to work full-time as a sculptor after that. And that gave him a great release, so he could travel internationally, and he went to India on 2 occasions, went to Japan. This is Shere Khan, it's called in India. And in the meantime, another piece for Shekinah Garden, Catherine McCann, the Morahilter Beater. Life is not always what you think it is. And that was the theme there. So he's experimenting with the stone, with the granite and limestone on different forms, and taken up again with the light, because he knew the Japanese were interested in light and the qualities of light, and this is the big influence on this piece here in Japan in 1996, Nanoa, the city of Nanoa in Japan, and the light at Newgrange was very much in his mind when he was composing this piece here. Kathleen, was that a long trip for him? Was he away for long at the time? And say something about that symposium, because these were symposia that he was learning an awful lot with.
Well, it's just that he enjoyed the whole experience of being in Japan and the Japanese people, and the warmth and the welcome and the respect that they had for each other and for living, especially in close quarters. And he was particularly impressed by the people.
And this piece is admired, I think, still today.
Yes.
It's in the western Japan.
Yes. Yeah.
Look at
It's
that,
across from Tokyo,
Across
on the
from
other
Tokyo.
side of the island. Yeah.
And there he is at work on that piece in 1996. Three up the Spare. So this is a typical catalogue page from Anita's work. The piece of information here, an image, and the year, and the quantity, and the client. And so the Oireachtas Waterford Crystal Award 1996, purchased at the exhibition. So he's winning a Oireachtas Award into the 1980s, 1990s, and those pieces are still some places in private gardens, but Kathleen's a good idea where most of the pieces are. He was back in India again at the village of Gulbalga, making a great piece in basalt at this symposium in 1996. One of his great big pieces in Ireland, apart from the Bunratty piece, is the image of Parnell, or the bronze, more than life-size bronze of Parnell. And Fred wouldn't do something without doing an enormous amount of research into how did Parnell dress himself. He looked into historical material look at the pose here, and you can see the detail in bronze. It's in the village of Rathdrum, and there's a plaque up in Rathdrum commemorating Fred and making the piece today, because they love their parallel in Rathdrum. And this is to put it in place, and it's a major piece of work to put a bronze of that size in place. And unveiled, and at the unveiling was President Mary Robinson. The President Michael D. Higgins has some very complimentary remarks on Fred and his sculpture. And again, a piece that didn't become a reality was, this is the maquette for W.B. Yeats here in Sligo. He would have liked to have had a nice piece of sculpture in Sligo town, but he has a family memorial, which we'll see soon, and the maquette is on sale here at Legacy. Another commission that he was asked to do by Dermot Desmond, the big financier, to make a deer and a bull and a bear, the stag and the bear for the Financial Services Centre. It never became a reality, but he made the maquettes, and that's what we have from good sculpting. They're still beautiful pieces of work. A massive piece was in 1990. The Cashel Ore, he called it, at Bunratty in 1993. He wants something that reflected the prehistoric past from Clare and the historical past at the same time. So opposite Bunratty Castle, he chose to build a sort of a mound representing the inauguration mound of the O'Briens of Thomond, because the O'Briens were in charge at Bunratty Castle itself, which was built, and the biggest and most important early Bronze Age hoard in Europe. 150 objects in 1854 were found at Muhan, not far away from Carrick-on-Fergus. And he got the catalogue, called to our house, and looked at various books and so on. So he took the theme of the gold collar at Muhan, and I think the Glenishean Gorge as well, to create this Cashel Ore at Bunratty. There's the image from the Muhan, the collar of gold. You can imagine nearly 150 objects in one hoard. Seemingly half of them were melted down, sold to the black market at the time. But some of them still survive, and the British Museum has a selection of them. But he wanted a major piece for a site like Bunratty. And it's really, it was a very, very big undertaking to make a piece as big as that. That was all made in Feely's yard, and Barry Feely really was a great supporter. It just says something about Barry Feely as a patron of Fred's release.
Because he was that. He was very encouraging, and he facilitated Fred in terms of maybe acquiring the stone and making sure that the stone had no flint in it and was pure all the way through, and then gave Fred the opportunity to work in the stone yard and use the equipment, which was a great help. And then he facilitated, some people to work alongside Fred, including Martha, in the studio. So he was quite a powerhouse in terms of what could happen with stone.
Martha's going to speak a little more about Finn and the work when we finish this bit. So there's Fred lording it over himself, and the one we began at the beginning, and the big deal to have this unveiled and properly presented at Bunratty Castle. And we've been talking to people there recently about maintaining it and cleaning it up and having it presented like it would be. It's a seat. There's an invitation for every child to go and sit. That was my own class from 1996 sitting in the piece when it was in the yard, and boy, the whole class fitted into it. Big class ahead of the time. And a very, very popular piece in Dublin, just called Beds at Portland Row. The whole of Dublin passes this every go down Portland Row, and the left-hand side you're going down Portland Road towards Amy Street in bronze. Kathleen, what did the locals say when he had made that?
Fred asked them, do they like this piece? And the children said, yeah, we love it, sir. Can you make us another one?
There you go. There they are playing hopscotch. And Kelly Harrington, go on, Pat.
I was worried there a few years ago. There was a lot of monuments being vandalised, taken away for the bronze, you know, melted down. And at one stage I was very worried about those two pieces that, you know, they could be whipped in the middle of the night because it would be quite easy. So I was kind of telling people like this should be, you know, there should be, make sure that there's a castle and all the rest. But anyway, I was talking to somebody from the locality, and I said, those two pieces there, are they safe? And the guy said, yeah, why? I said, well, there's a lot of bronze going missing like around the country. Is there any danger? And he says, are you mad? Do you think somebody will come in there and take those two bronzes? No, they were. We're dead safe.
Dead safe. I wish a few more like that. Drí of Ongawa, the magic of the blacksmith, was the piece that he chose to do. Martha worked on this, and this was one of your first pieces I supposed to work on, was it really?
Yeah.
This is in the town park in Tralee, and it was done to commemorate Shimsatira, and one of the big dance pieces they would do with harp and orchestra would be, you know, ding dong dedlo, ding dong dedlo, ding dong dedlo, Búchinagawa Igishil Sejul, Búchinagawa in the Kela. So the music of the blacksmith created was the catapult for that tune, that song, to be the dance, to be danced to. And so the magic of the blacksmith, and of course this is Jack's father's image that he worked on to use this. So Martha, just a word on that.
Well, I'll talk about it in a little minute.
Okay.
When I'm talking about
That's okay, yeah, because we'll try and get through
that's
these.
the
So,
link.
yeah, lovely piece in the town park in Tralee. He has pieces in Clare, Roscommon, Mayo, Donegal, Dublin, Wicklow, quite a few Irish counties, apart from his international symposia. And here is the O'Carlon harp at Keejo. This is the unveiling, and with Fred and his father, Fred Conlon. The work is based on the original harp, which is on display in Clonanna's house in County Roscommon. And when Eddie O'Connor was chief executive of Board na Mór, many of you here knew Eddie O'Connor, he got them to bring, he sponsored a huge concert in Dublin, the National Concert Hall, and he got them to bring the O'Carlon harp from Clonanna's house to the National Concert Hall in Dublin. And here we have the current holder of the harp competition at Keech. She'll play another piece now when I finish. Get ready to do that before Martha. Just a few on musicians. The Fiddler of Dooley is a competition for Sligo town that's been on the go since 1965, and in 1988 we were having a revival. We got Fred to make this piece. It's a prized piece in Sligo, kept in Sligo. The winner gets it to hold it in their hands for a minute or two to take the photograph, and we keep it in Sligo after that. We give them the plaque every year. So very proud of that. When Josie McDermott died in 1992, I rang Fred that evening. I said, Fred, I have a job for you tonight. Would you be up for doing a death mask of Josie McDermott? And I knew that Josie McDermott had no relations in Ireland. He had a first cousin in England somewhere. So I only had to get the permission of the undertaker. And we got into the funeral parlour about 12 o'clock at night, and he did a death mask in plaster. We had to wait until 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, for the plaster to dry, and then sat in a shoebox in Kathleen's garage for X number of years until about 2013. We got it cast into bronze. Beautiful piece of work. A death mask is the only time outside of Sean O'Riordan that a death mask has been made for any Irish musician in modern times. But Josie was a flute player, and Fred had already made a lovely maquette of a flute player at home, based on, I think, one of his own family. I think the lady herself was the flute player. Beautiful piece of work. That's here at the exhibition. And then for the Morrison Memorial, we have a milestone, an original milestone. It's all etched out. It should have said Sligo, I think 12, oil 13 or something, but it was etched out during the Second World War, in case the Germans would invade. So there are a number of these milestones around the country with nothing on them, and that's why. But James Morrison composed, or else he recorded a tune called The Milestone at the Garden, so we got Fred to take the milestone, created a memorial around it, and he was very happy to be there with the musicians. That's about 1996 or 7. There 10 people in that photograph, and that's in 1996. 7 are dead, that I know of, maybe 8, in that photograph alone. I'm still living. I think. That's John Regan, famous Sligo musician, and as a man from Belfast. I think he's still living, all the rest are dead. So, you know, you think if it's a regular photograph, it becomes very historic after a while. But in Sligo here in the big piece that he has done here, Finn 1997. We were commemorating the 150th anniversary of the famine in Sligo, and I was very worried that he wouldn't get this commission because there were at least 12 entries and only 3 were to be chosen out of 12. And the committee was composed of people now who some of them wouldn't know an awful lot about art, I must say. Well, they know, so there were county councillors and people like that, and they all had a vote. So I was really very worried that this wouldn't be chosen. But of course, it was chosen as one of 3, and it's in the famine memorial, the famine graveyard over St. John's, where we knew there were 2,500 people buried there with a grave marker to nobody. That was the famine workhouse. So Fred chose this very, very evocative piece from his origins of West Sligo. You know, the trees are facing the other way from the sea, and that people died and a tree grew on the spot and the spot was marked. So that's why he calls it Finn as the Finch that Anam all Luba and not. Or I'm grateful my soul is bending tonight like the wind, like the westerly wind. And I think Elaine found that quote from him from Sean O'Riordan's poetry. Now, am I right in that? Mm-hmm. I have some memory about you finding it yourself, or Roland found that quote.
Yes.
And he used that quote. It's in bronze at the base of it. And it's, I put this side in because, not because of this piece itself, but the ESB had to be cut down and to be shut off in that whole area for a couple of hours that day. It was a big deal putting that in place. But in 1997, the director, the professor of Irish Studies in Hofstra University, Maureen Murphy, when she saw that piece, she said that's going to be the frontispiece for the family curriculum for the state of New York. And so the family curriculum in the state of New York was nearly 1,600 pages of material, and that's the frontispiece. And it went into 3,000 schools in the state of New York. And she was very happy to see it. So then Maquette is a beautiful piece of work. That's on sale outside. So think about an investment. A piece of bronze a foot high was about £1,000 in 1988. So it's not expensive at all by today's standards. Think about that. And again, he was using the theme of light and peace and reconciliation. This is Sligo commemoration in the 1916-23 period. This is a piece in Roscommon. Rathdrum, sorry, Rathdrum, 1798. And we come to the millennium. We're not far away now from it, and we're sailing when Jack talked about this piece already, the millennium sculpture for Lucan College in the year 2000. What another wonderful piece of work. These vertical columns and the fonts recognising the millennia, the knowledge. Jack, quick word on that? Because the next sculpture is something very similar.
When Fred did something, you know, he had so much thought kind of imbued into it, you know. So like the 2 uprights, you know, the 2 centuries gone by, and then the 3 fonts for the 3 centuries, the 2 that have gone. Everything was based from the birth of Christ. He was very, very Christian in his ways. And the fonts then are the fonts of knowledge, you know, so he was pitching it towards a school setting. So he had everything kind of thought out. Then underneath there was a light, and at night the light shines up very strongly through the first one, less strongly through this to the second one, and then to the third one, just lighting it up slightly because the new millennium was coming at that stage. So,
and then the following year, 2001, he has Fuinche Gal. Fuinche is the source of knowledge, the bright source for the INTO Credit Union headquarters in Parliament Square in Dublin. And the connection with Sligo again is that Michael McHugh, or Mick McHugh as we know him, his father was the principal in the school in Eastgate. And Mick McHugh was manager of the credit union. So it was easy enough to persuade a bit of sponsorship there. And it was a beautiful piece of work. Again, Jack, it has the light coming through at night. It's in the backyard of the credit union, teachers union in Dublin city centre. And you know, he talks about the cap on the top could be lifted to add another font for the fourth millennium. So he was forward thinking as much as casting his mind on the past. That's the beautiful piece. And it's lit up in the evening. And this is Michael McHugh. He was here last week for the opening. Joe Toole from General Secretary of the INTO. You might know your man there. And Fred. So it's a great piece of celebratory work. One of his very last pieces is Brendan Behan, 2003-04. It was a smallish project in Dublin. There were a couple of other bronzes with that. And then his last great piece, 04-05, with Eileen herself on the left-hand side. Ray in the model. He's coming back to the theme of light and shape and design. As you can look through this over towards Knockton Ray. A beautiful piece of work. I'm finishing up with another slide of one of my own favourite pieces. Must be Eatless, which he did for Lucan Community College. So Fred, Jack, your contribution to Fred's work was enormous, really. And his gravestone.
We were good mates.
Right, you were great mates. His gravestone designed by Eileen herself at Eastgate, the Rathley Cemetery in Eastgate. Rossley Cemetery in Eastgate. And if Fred's bones are lying out at Rossley, maybe his spirit is up there with the Aurora Borealis that Eddie Lee took from Sligo here last autumn. Sinead Mochitcha. I might. That tune, what was your choice to begin with? Robert Jordan's an O'Carolan piece. And while she's doing that, I'm going to get Martha to organise about 10 or 12 slides talking about Finn's work. So, Robert Jordan's by Torrick O'Carolan. 1938. And before that time, the Premier Harpers were the Conlons. And I always remind Fred that Joyce had an ancestor who was Conlon brackets Conlon. So I said to Fred, well, he's of an ancient sept of Harpers probably too. The O'Carolans, the Sligo were fantastic. So I'm going to ask Martha now to.
Well, I'm going to leave that aside for now.
Just
so
not too many slides now, just
no,
short
no.
bunch of slides.
I asked the internet how long 10-15 minutes worth of speaking was in pages in writing. So I did what it told me, and it said it was about 4 or 5, so that's what I've done. So I'm going to read a little bit because I know I wouldn't remember all the things that I wanted to say here without it having it written down. And then we have a few little kind of behind the scenes informal photos of the man himself. So, surprise. Firstly, I would like to say what a great honour it is to be asked to share a few words about Finn here today. At Legacy, a parallel exhibition of Fred and Finn Conlon's work, a retrospective overview of Fred's work and Finn's first solo show. The solo show is a significant milestone in an artist's career. For me to be invited to help celebrate in that event in Finn's life is a deep privilege. Legacy couldn't be a more fitting title for this show. It sums up so much. I stand here today as a practicing sculptor in no small measure due to the powerful influence that Fred's support and influence was in my life. I would also like to acknowledge the Hamilton Gallery, Martina, as not only a fitting venue for the show. A hometown show always has its own particular resonance, but it was also the place 21 years ago that I had my first solo show, and Seamus, you spoke at my show. I'm in constant awe at how the threads of our lives interweave and connect. I first met Fred as an assistant sculptor in the Kilkenny Limestone Symposium, held in the Feelystone Quarry in Kilkenny. This was a big symposium with big names: Fred Conlon, Eileen McDonough, Alan Coonahan, Michael Quain, Antonella Tiazza from Italy, John Main from the UK, and Yashu Yagi from Japan. I feel I'm missing somebody. I don't think so. We'll see. I stand to be corrected on that. It was held over 3 weeks in the heat wave of 1995 in the hottest place in Ireland, in a dust bowl that was the quarry. The sculptors worked in enormous blocks of limestone. My task was to assist the Italian sculptor Antonella. But as in the way of symposiums, and particularly around mealtimes and after work, maybe in the pub with a pint, stories are shared, friendships formed and connections made. As Eileen mentioned in her address, the symposium format suited Fred down to the ground. He was in his element. On this symposium, as a fresh graduate from art college, living in Dublin, I probably had no idea how important the meeting of Fred and Eileen was, 2 sculptors from Sligo. In addition to this, my college sweetheart was also from Sligo, Ransborough in fact, the foot of Knocknarea and the doorstep of Carramore Tombs. I think it was fated that I actually moved here. So the following year, I did. In 1996, I had left college. It was impossible to get a studio space in Dublin. We were coming into that Celtic Tiger era, and suddenly every backstreet garage shed was worth money. I hoped that it might be easier to get a workspace in the west of Ireland. So it was around this time that Fred had been working on the commission for the blacksmith, a huge undertaking. Do you want to pull up? Can you still find that?
Let's go back to it.
Well, it might be worth it actually.
Yeah.
So it was a huge undertaking. He'd been working on the commission for a long time. It was greater than life-size figure. It was carved in the round from limestone, and he was carving it in the yard of Feelystone and Boyle. I'm probably in the way now actually. So
One second. I go down to the
yeah.
Which one do you like?
Yeah. Fred was at a point in the project where he had done so much work, but there was still so much to be done, and he reached out for help. I suspect that he was being strongly encouraged in the background by Kathleen to seek assistance, and that's how I came in. I was Fred's first assistant, and at first I could see this was really hard for him, to trust, to delegate, to allow another person to even touch the stone that he had invested so much of himself in. At first he tasked me with the more remote work, like carving the quenching trough for the blacksmith. It was a simple, blocky form. Slowly, as he saw that I could be trusted to cut and shape according to his marks and drawings, he allowed me to do more. And so began 2+ years where Fred would call on me to assist him. I called this time my apprenticeship. And when I tell people about Fred, I refer to him in terms such as my Zen master. Over that time, the endless cups of tea, there was chat, there was talk, there was instruction, there was storytelling, there was sharing, and it all began in one of the coldest, darkest sheds in a wind tunnel at the back of the Stoneyard in Boyle. It was a really dark shed, and when Eileen describes the room in the RTC, smoke-filled with bare concrete walls, still it was a magic place. You know, how can you turn this dark, windy, cold spot? And yet, in my memory, it was just full of light and warmth and conversation. Yeah, the beginning of my existence, really. Fred involved me. He shared with me more than just the process of stone carving. He involved me sometimes in the design process, behind the scenes stuff. There were group things called to hash out ideas in response to calls for submissions for public art. We would bash about ideas, sketch, discuss relevance, history, heritage of the location, etc. All to one aim: to build connection between the sculpture, its environment, and the people for whom it would become part of their daily lives. Fred had great respect for this, and I think your whole talk shows all of those connections that he would weave and build into every single piece that he did. Core principles. In addition to this, Fred allowed me some connection to his life as well. Husband to Kathleen and father of 5 children. I was allowed glimpses of how it was to live the whole life. Being Fred, he would get obsessive about the pieces he worked on, and would complain in the run-up to holidays that he was being dragged away, made to go on holiday for 2 weeks in France. It was as if he was being sentenced to 50 lashes. Then, though, he would always come back rested, restored, happy, and enormously grateful. It made me smile. So in the background at this time was the youngest of Fred's children, Finn. My earliest memory of him is of him as a teenager, of him hovering around as teenagers do, in his uniform. Atypically, though, for a teenager, he showed interest and curiosity in what was going on. Be it conversations or the design workshops that were sometimes held in the dining room, Anita, who was always very much part of that. I also remember that Finn was uncommonly polite. Fred's legacy lives strongly in me. His sensibility for honouring the heritage of an area, its customs, its history, its landscape. His systematic and considered approach to not only an idea but also its execution is a code I still live by to this day. Finn, too, deeply acknowledges Fred's contribution to his practice, and these words are Finn's words. I was I asked to have Finn's CV sent to me because I have no memory for a chronology. I couldn't do a presentation like this. I would have no memory for dates. So when his CV was sent, there was this lovely little paragraph at the end of it where Finn has this piece, and also Eileen, and really surprisingly and touchingly, he mentioned me in it. It's a lot. So anyway, this is what he says in regard to Fred, his dad, being of influence. My background is heavily influenced by Fred Conlon, a sculptor who worked primarily in stone and bronze. Growing up, art and geometric shapes were ever present, thus providing me with constant visual stimuli. I learned that a piece of sculpture needs to encourage interaction with its viewer and or the local community. Sculpture needs to be engaged with and felt at a physical, emotional and cognitive level by the viewer. So now in the endless circling of life, the turning of the spiral as Fred would have described it, we get to share an important moment in Finn's life, his first solo show. So rather than talk about the works on display, their meaning, their qualities, the material, etc., rather than trying to describe the meaning behind them, or broker an interpretation between Finn the artist and you the viewer, I would instead like to focus on the attributes of what the artist has had to develop to get here, and what it means to get to this point. Just as the process of becoming an artist is a journey that actually never ends, we are in a constant state of change and evolution. The learning never stops. The exploration, seeking, striving is nearly the very definition of what it is to be an artist. We keep evolving, refining, honing our language, finding vocabulary of our inspiration, tuning the whispers of our inspiration and motivation into tangible, tactile outputs. The idea, the motivation, the inspiration is the seed, the kernel that begins the process of transformation. It is the step, and just that, just the first step. Then the work begins. Then the alchemy has to start, of turning an idea into reality. As David Lynch, recently deceased filmmaker, says, that we don't have ideas, that we catch them like little fish. And when we catch that little fish, that's where the skill, structures, discipline and processes start. Invariably, someone starting out on their journey isn't necessarily equipped to fulfill these challenges. The desire to be an artist, let alone a sculptor, is an arduous one. Those processes being that much harder for sculpture. Heavier, dustier, expensive locations. It's just complicated. But that quality of determination and persistence then becomes the most important thing. To find a way, to make do, to use what you have, to call in outside assistance, to get training, to practice. This is not an overnight experience. This process of turning the desire to make art into reality takes years. Finn has studied, sitting in guilds. He has approached other accomplished artists for assistance. He has attended numerous trainings. He has applied himself to the task of learning and mastering several different materials, each one with its own set of parameters. Bronze casting, model making, mould making, casting, chasing, finishing, patination, stone carving, and all of its joys, cutting, shaping, drilling, polishing. And also drawing and printmaking are among the areas Finn has applied himself to. Deservedly, Finn has had successes along the way, and I'll pick my 3 favourites. Winning the emerging category at the Botanic Gardens exhibition in 2012 for his fantastic piece Play. I was truly impressed when I saw this piece. It was not a beginner's work. It had all the hallmarks of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. We'll show that in, no, I'm going to leave it for now, but just bookmark that in our head because I'll show a little piece of it in a minute. Winning the William Wheeler People's Choice Award at the graduate exhibition of the City and Guilds. Now this is a special one, and Kathleen, I know you were so proud, and Fred would have been over the moon with that one. The People's Choice Award would have just been music to Fred's ears. And now with the selection for the Homer Faber partnership with accomplished Dublin-based sculptor Helen Conlon. This is a world-recognised opportunity for Finn, and I'm sure many good things will come of this exposure. So we're going to move on to just a little piece. We might call up the first one. So this is the play that I just mentioned. I'm not going to go into discussing these too much, but I'll just leave that as the background picture. I was reading recently about the emotional cycle of change. It said, whenever we decide to make a change in our lives, we experience an emotional roller coaster. Psychologists Don Kelly and Darrell Connor describe the emotional cycle of change as having 5 stages. It can be plotted on a graph, a big sweeping U wave. I loved the titles that they give to this. 1. Uninformed optimism. 2. Informed pessimism. 3. Valley of despair. 4. Informed optimism. And 5. Success and fulfillment. In the book, the authors recognise that phase 3, the valley of despair, is when many people give up. This process of change and transformation is something that as artists we experience continually, not just through the bigger arenas of our life, but in the daily ones too. Each piece that is created goes through these phases, and I agree that it is an emotional roller coaster. Starting out with a bare block, it's all exciting, it looks amazing in your mind's eye, full of enthusiasm. Several days, weeks in, oh my God, what have I undertaken? More days, more weeks later, my goodness, when does this end? Will it ever be finished? Even more days or weeks later, okay, maybe I can see it'll be finished. Maybe it won't be awful. And finally, after yet more days, weeks, done, thank goodness. Maybe it wasn't so terrible after all. Once we've navigated this several times, the fear and the tactics, the resilience, and even, dare I say, confidence starts to develop to get us through the peaks and valleys. So for me, that quality of determination, of commitment, of heart and of courage is probably the biggest indicator of success for an artist. And it's one that we can all agree Finn demonstrates continually, and I would even suggest is part of his character. I observed Finn when he was working in my studio. He was meticulous, bringing in his tools, unpacking them, working, packing up again in the evening, washing his cups after him, arriving on time. All these qualities testify to his perseverant nature. So now I want to share the behind the scenes photos that Finn and Angelina, obviously mostly Angelina, have so kindly provided, and where you will see what I saw. But, yeah, beautifully. So these are just little kind of work in progress photos. You can just keep flicking.
Yeah.
So this is, and I loved the little captions that were on Angelina's photos when she sent them through on WhatsApp. I think it was this one that she said, lucky divorce didn't ensue because this is all taking place in the tiny little flat that they have in London. This is in Eastkey, and I thought it was a lovely one to show and working away. And this one just shows Eastkey all over, doesn't it, with the wide sky. This was during COVID times, you can recognise that by the haircut. And designing a piece that's out here altered.
That's out there, yeah.
This is an Eileen studio. Great Eileen herself there, and that's and here we have 6 week old Alberta joining the scene. This is work from the CGLA, I can never say that in the right way, City and Guilds.
City and Guilds London Art School, yes.
Yeah.
CGLA, yes.
And this is the little certificate that you get when you win the People's Choice Award. So I hope that's framed and found a place somewhere. And here we are, full circle. Right at the end, little Alberta during the party. So the reason why I felt it was important to show behind the scenes photos instead of the polished ones is to get the idea of, you know, the amount of work that it takes, the struggle, is particularly when you're starting out, because you don't automatically come gifted with the studio, you don't come gifted with the wherewithal, the knowledge, nothing. You have to make all that yourself from scratch. And so I'll just nearly finish here, just tie up things. Now there's one last thing I wanted to mention. Finn and Fred are very different people, very different characters. But there's one thing, one trait, that I can definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, say with 100% clarity and conviction, it's a clone copy match between the two, is their extraordinarily good choice of wife. Choosing these fine women as spouses, articulate, caring, and above all supportive. Kathleen and Angelina are superpowers behind these sculptures. They deserve acknowledgement. It is agreed that in boiling water that it is the first 10 degrees that requires the most energy. So it is at this point that we celebrate here today. That initial investment of energy to get to this point is completed. Stage 5, success and fulfillment. Of course we know, only to begin again, but for now, for today, completed. So I hope now, surrounded by friends, family, loved ones, I hope, Finn, that you can feel and recognise our admiration, our pride in your effort and your achievement, our love and support, our recognition of your talents and commitment as you pass into a new phase of your life as an artist. Congratulations.
She's studying in Cork, and she's come up for the weekend, and we're just so grateful to have come up last weekend as well. So good luck with your studies, and her harping is sublime. Jack Harte is a practicing writer. His last novel, Unlikely Bedfellows. Was that a little bit?
Had one since that.
Yeah, what says that? Well, that was hilarious, beginning to end. He has a play at the moment in rehearsal in Dublin. He really shouldn't be here at all this weekend, so he was up for the official opening, went back and came down again yesterday or the day before. So, Jack, we're so thankful that you were making time to be here with us, because you enhanced our gathering enormously. To Martha for her words of cutting finesse. Just like meaning. Great parallel for Eileen's work at the opening, and I think Martina wants to say something to wrap up, maybe, or Kathleen wants to join plans to. Okay.
Well, maybe on Kathleen's behalf and Finn's behalf, and whoever's up there looking down on us, thank you all for your attention today. An extraordinary turnout, and Kathleen, you will realise afterwards that we might have had 40 people in this room, another 50 or 60 came and went, if not more. So, you know, the amount of interest in this, and I'm just sorry the walls aren't bigger, but I don't think the walls could have contained this anyway. It's extraordinary listening in the room and appreciation So look, thank you for choosing this space, and thank you to all of you for being here this afternoon, and to all the speakers and musicians.
Just one more.
Oh, you
Okay,
will,
yeah.
good woman.
One final word. Well, just to say, again, to reiterate, thank you. Especially, first of all, thank you to Fred, because without him, none of us would be here today. But I want to thank our lovely, wonderful family, our children, my own extended family, Fred's extended family, our great and marvellous and true friends, down to the years, who welcomed us to Sligo, who made us part of this community, and who ensured that we would be supported right through from the beginning to Fred's passing and beyond. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much.